bottom right where it says studio mode, press that. And now your right side is your program, and that's what people will be seeing. And you could queue stuff up in your left side, which is your preview. So if you want to get a scene ready to go and you want to monitor it, you could put that in the left side. And when you're ready, you could choose a transition, whether it be fade, cut, so on and so forth, and push it live. And that's just if you have a little bit more of a complex setup going on. In this scenario, I highly recommend you just keep it to your one program monitor. Down here at the bottom left, we have our scenes. Now I have one created already. I can add another with the plus icon and remove one with the minus icon. I could also move them up and down just to sort them, and I could even rename them. Now one scene could be just my webcam, another could be just my screen, another one could be both, and so on and so forth. This is really where you just make each scene ready to go so that when you click to it, it'll actually switch for your live stream. Each scene needs sources, and that's what this sources section is right here. So if I want one of just my webcam, I would go in, click the plus icon, and choose from the wide variety. In this case, it would be the video capture device. Now I could name it, so I'll just call it webcam. And this is also where your external webcam and so on would appear. In this scenario, I'm going to be using my USB webcam, and there it is. So I can configure the video. There's so many settings. I highly recommend you dive deep into it to make sure you're getting exactly what you would like. So in this case, I'll hit OK, and there it is. It's in my scene. I could right click it and I'll get even more options, including transform, which in this scenario, if I wanted to, I could flip it and so on and so forth, but I'm just going to click fit the screen. And there we go. Now my screen is showing my webcam, and that's what this scene is for. So if I would like, I could rename this scene to webcam. And then I could go and click a new scene. This one I'll call desktop. So now, as you can see, my webcam went away because we're actively selected on the desktop scene. If I click webcam scene, I'm back here to my webcam. If I go back to desktop, it's gone. So here in this scenario, I'll go to add a new source, and I could either do display capture, which is the entire screen. If I have multiple screens, I could select which one, or I could go to window capture, which will only capture a specific window. If I open a window on top of that, it won't actually record that new window. It'll only record the original one that I selected. So it really comes down to what you want. But in this scenario, I'll do display capture. And this one I'll just call main screen. Just like that, we're going to have a little bit of inception, but my resolution of my monitor, my laptop screen is fairly large, so it won't fit. So similar to the webcam, we'll just go ahead and fit that to the screen. And there we go, a little bit of inception, but that is my desktop scene, and this is my webcam scene. And I have my properties up here. So if I want, I could capture the cursor. I could avoid that. If I have multiple monitors, I could select that here. But for now, we'll just click OK. So there we go. Those are my two scenes, my webcam scene, my desktop scene. Whichever one I want, I could just easily have it show up. I create a new scene. I could actually combine the two like I said earlier, but for now we're going to keep on moving. Next up is the audio mixer. Now from here, I could very easily control each audio source separately. So if I have audio playing on my computer that I want to use, I can control that here. So if it's background music, I could simply lower it so that it's not super loud. Now my microphone is just the built-in one on this laptop. And so I could see the audio level here, make sure I'm not peaking too much. I could always adjust it accordingly. Now, if you have a device like this webcam and it has a microphone and you enable that microphone, then you can control that separately here as well. So that goes for your desktop audio, so on and so forth. Now, scene transitions is pretty self-explanatory. I could choose from cut to fade. And if I would like, I can do all sorts of crazy things, but we're going to keep this simple. And this is just the duration. So if I want it to fade, it'll be a 300 millisecond fade. And so if I go to desktop, there's the fade. Fade. Nice. And if I switch that to cut, it's going to be very abrupt. Boom, boom, no fade at all. Now for the control section, this is where you could either start streaming, start recording, or you could do both at the same time. And you could also go back to that studio mode that we talked about. So for instance, here's desktop on the left. This isn't what people are going to see on my stream. They're only going to see the program, which is me with the webcam. So that's something you can keep in mind. But again, I think you should just leave it at this setting. Speaking of settings, go ahead and click the settings button. And this is where you're really going to configure things down to the nitty-gritty details. The first tab we're going to check out is video. In this scenario, we have a 1080p canvas, and we're going to actually output that at 1080p. So that's important. So if you're recording videos, if you're actually streaming, we're doing 1080p. So if you want something less because of your internet, you could do that. If you want to pipe this up to 4K, go for it. Audio is also important. If you have an external microphone, this is where you would enable it. You could have other microphones as well. You could also have your desktop audio enabled. And if you have any sort of issue where your microphone isn't lining up with your webcam, you could set up delays. So you could have a 100 millisecond delay, just in case there's an issue like that. This is where you configure it. The output tab is very important, and I highly recommend you look more into things like video bitrate. That will really make a big difference for your streaming quality. And then of course you want to make sure that you're choosing the right setting for recording your video. So if you want to just have it at the same level as your stream, you could do that. Or if you want to just record and not stream at all, you'll definitely want to take this and boost it up based on how much space you have on your drive, how good of a computer you have, and many other factors. This is also where you would check out your audio bitrate and what video recording format you want, among many other things, like where you're actually going to record. So make sure you have enough space and you don't start recording and max out your drive. You could also change your output mode to advanced and get really crazy, but I highly recommend you watch a separate video on that. We are not going to be covering that. Finally, stream. This is important because this is how you actually connect to your streaming service. Here it's set up for Twitch. You can do YouTube, Mixer doesn't exist anymore, Facebook Live, Restream, Twitter, so on and so forth. If you want to stream to multiple platforms at the same time, I do recommend that you check out restream.io. We use it here at Elegant Themes and it's a great service. However, if you want to just connect to a custom service, you would click custom, and then that service should give you a server address and a stream key, which you enter here, and that's it. I'm not going to talk about how to use Twitch or YouTube or any of that, because when you set up a stream on that service, they give you the instructions as well as the necessary information to fill out. Once all of that is actually configured, you just hit start streaming and literally you're live. It's no different than starting a recording. You click it, boom, that's it. And then you stop it and that's it. Now on some services like YouTube, they have an additional step. They have a button that you have to actually click that says, yes, I am ready to go live. And then when you're done, you have to press it to stop streaming. So it's not just here on OBS, but it's also on that platform. Now, services like Twitch, they just let you hit start streaming and you're live, so on and so forth. So definitely check based on the service you're using. And again, when you go and actually start a stream, they usually give you instructions. Here's a quick pro tip. I recommend you go back in the settings, go to general, and click on show confirmation dialog when starting streams, because what this will do is make it so you don't accidentally start streaming, which I may or may not have done before. If you have this enabled, it'll actually ask if you really do want to start streaming, which, trust me, you want that enabled. If you have any questions about OBS, be sure to leave them in the comment section down below and I'll do my best to respond. If you enjoyed this video, then be sure to give it a like and subscribe for more content. With that said, thanks for watching and we'll catch you in the next one.
Doing something fun today. This is a video that's been on my request list for probably the longest, but there's just been so much exciting stuff happening lately with the new Stream Beats drop and, you know, Mixer getting shut down, all those things that I haven't quite found the time to do this one. OBS, the streaming software that nearly every streamer uses. Some of you guys use it really well, some of you guys not so much. And then some of you are just opening it up for the first time and are completely overwhelmed and have no idea what anything means. There are so many cool things in OBS that no matter which of those people you identify with in your skill set of OBS, there's always something new to learn. So let's go through the software. Let's just build a stream together. I'll show you the bare bone basics, like setting up multiple scenes, knowing which settings are important within the vast array of options in the settings tab that you've probably seen before. And I'll show you some of my favorite, more advanced tips and tricks that are actually really easy to do if you just know what to click on. Things like custom widgets and hotkeys to switch scenes automatically. Sounds good? Go. By the way, huge thank you to the sponsor of today's video, owns.tv. They are your one-stop shop for all your stream aesthetic needs, whether it's overlays or alerts or panels or whatever. And one of my favorite things about it is that their overlays are modular. So for example, if you and all your friends want a similar overlay and you pick up this minimalist series overlay you're looking at right now, each of you can pick and choose different pieces of the overlay to use. So even though you'll all be using the exact same theme, none of you will have the exact same overlay. If you'd like to make the smart move like many from the community have done, feel free to use the link in the description down below. That link also supports the channel when you use it. And then on top of that, if you want 40% off, use code alpha at checkout. So the goal of this video is within the next 10 to 15 minutes or so, set up a live stream that looks comparable to the one that I use when I go live on Twitch, which by the way, I stream every Monday, Wednesday, Saturday. Link to that in the description down below. Come hang out. Sound like a plan? Awesome. So with OBS launched and completely bare bones, this is what it looks like. I know it's weird. You got a bunch of weird boxes. You've got some stuff here with milliseconds and you got a bunch of little buttons here. In the beginning, all we're going to look at is this area, which is our preview. It shows us what our stream looks like. And these two areas right here. These are all your different scenes. So you can have a gameplay scene here that has your gameplay and your camera over in the corner. And then you can have an intermission scene here, which would be obviously between games when you can blow your camera up larger and interact with your chat a little bit more. And as you switch between them, the different sources are all the elements inside that scene. So essentially, these are folders with all the different things in it. Let's start by making our gameplay scene. The first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna rename this scene gameplay, so I know which one it is. So we got our scene. Let's add in a source. First thing we're going to do is we're going to grab our display. So right off the bat, I know this is a little bit inception-y because we're looking at our display, which also shows our display, which you get the point. And here we can see our entire screen and what it's capturing. So we're going to hit OK. And you can see anything I might bring up, whether it's my Stream Deck software or whatever, it's going to show up right here. Anyone that's watching my stream can see my screen now. Now, there are a couple different ways of capturing your screen. One more that you should be aware of. Another one, instead of using display capture, would be game capture. You can see if I add this in, if you have a game open, you'll be able to choose that specific game, or you can say choose any full screen application, which is, usually you play your games in full screen. It'll grab whatever game is running, but it won't grab anything else. So this way, if you alt tab out of your game or minimize it to open up something in YouTube, your audience isn't going to be able to see it because it's only capturing your gameplay. However, the advantage to this is game capture is a lighter load on your PC. So if you're running a little bit more of a budget PC and trying to game and stream on it at the same time, it might be best to use game capture. You'll notice fewer dropped frames on your stream. So now you can see here, I've got two different sources in here, game capture, display capture. I'm going to get rid of game capture by hitting this little minus button right there. And we're going to stick with game capture because I got a pretty beefy PC over here. All right, let's add in the most important part. Let's add in your face. So whether you're using a webcam or a DSLR going into a capture card, those are all called video capture devices. So we're going to name this one webcam. You can see if I click on device, it'll show me every single video input source that the computer recognizes. So if I had another webcam plugged in here, it would show up right in here. But we're using my EOS R connected to my Camlink right now. And so we're going to go with Camlink 4K. And generally, device default is fine. But if you need to go to custom and do a custom resolution, that's an option for you. Let's shrink this down because it's our gameplay scene. We're gonna put it over here. I'm trying to like move this so you don't get that weird inception-y stuff. I'm trying to cover it with the webcam. Maybe make it a little bit smaller. Yeah, maybe something like that. If I were gaming, I'd probably zoom in a little bit more during this scene. And there we go. We got our gameplay. We got our camera. Honestly, that is the bare bones that you can start a stream like that and people will enjoy it. Now, one thing to note is that the order of the sources is important. So you can see right now my webcam is on top of my display capture. And that's entirely because my webcam is on top of my display capture. If I drag it underneath it, look at that. If I bring it back up, it goes back on top again. Make sure you're ordering your sources in the order of front to back. So next thing, let's grab an overlay. So we want to add another source. And first thing we're going to do is we're going to add a static overlay, a non-animated overlay. And it's just going to be an image. We'll call it camera border. So we're going to browse for an image file, which I've got one right on the desktop called white line camera border. And it's just a simple white rectangle, which by the way, you do whatever you want. This is where you get to be creative. I would recommend not going overboard and keeping these things simple. This is actually pretty similar to what mine is currently set to. I'm going to turn off the display capture with this, just so I can see the edges of the camera a little bit easier. You can use the arrow keys to move it one at a time. Cool. Let's turn this back on. Now we got a camera border, and we can do something pretty cool here. We can take the camera border and the webcam and we can group them. We're just going to call them cam. And now I can move, I can stretch this whole thing. It'll all work together. Now, if I wanted to add an animated border, I would go to add and I would go to media source, which is where you import videos. And we're going to call this animated overlay. So here's one that I got during a Fiverr video that I shot a while ago. A Fiverr artist animated this for me. You can see it's really subtle. It's simple, but it's kind of stylized. You got this little thing moving, you got this little thing flashing here. So if you wanted to add an animated overlay, that's where you'd find it. But I'm going to get rid of it by hitting this little minus button. There's one more thing to add to this scene to make it a fully featured gameplay scene, and that's going to be our alerts. So whether you use Streamlabs or Stream Elements, whenever you're done customizing your alerts, they pop you out a browser source, right? Or a URL. So for example, if I were to go to Stream Elements, which is the service I use. So here we can see I've got my sub alerts. This is what they look like. I'm going to copy the link from Stream Elements. I'm going to go back here. I'm going to add one more source. It's going to be a browser source. We're going to call it sub alerts. We're going to paste that URL right in there. We're going to make sure the width and height match what we have it set to in our alert software. So that alert in Stream Elements was a 1080p alert, and hit OK. And now if I emulate another subscriber, you can see on my scene here, let's put them just right. There we go. Got a little Charmander jumping up and doing an alert on my camera. And also we're going to throw this inside our camera scene. So that way, again, if we move this around, our alerts come with us. And this is now a solid gaming scene. You got your camera, you got your gameplay, you got a little bit of design added to it, and you've got your alerts for when people follow or sub or drop bits or whatever. From there, it's just kind of whatever you feel like adding. And browser sources can be really cool. The majority of fancy widgets that you put on your scene are done in a browser widget. So for example, I worked with this really talented widget designer named AC Pixel, who made this now playing scene. So you can see if I play Neon Renegade from Streambeats, I can show my chat exactly what I'm playing. And all I have to do is launch this widget, take the URL, create a new browser source, which we will call now playing, and paste it in there. And he told me this is also 1920 by 1080. And there it is. You can move it around, resize it if we want a little now playing widget in the bottom left of the screen. Now it's right there. So there you go. You got a really cool now playing widget. You can hear the music playing in the background, and it took me like 15 seconds. So let's jump to the next thing. Let's set up a second scene here. We're gonna hit the plus button right here. We're gonna name it intermission, which is, in my opinion, the most important scene. A lot of people think your gameplay scene is the most important one because it's probably showing the most. But in reality, when you have your gameplay scene up, they're there to watch your gameplay and see you in the corner. And your intermission screen is when you're interacting with your audience. It's where it's about the actual engagement. And so I think this is the one that you should spend the most time on. Now you can see I can click back and forth. The intermission scene is empty because we haven't set anything up yet. But when you click on one, it changes scenes. Now let's do one thing first. The most important part of an intermission screen is the camera. So we're going to go back to video capture device, and you can see it shows you which ones you've already made. So instead of making a whole new source, you can add an existing source, and here's our webcam. And just like that, we have our webcam full screen for our intermission. And if I click back and forth, you can see how it works. One thing I'm not crazy about is this crossfade transition. I want to do something really cool. So let's move over here to scene transitions. And right now it's set to fade with 300 millisecond duration. And you can see if I change this to 1000, see how slow that is? If I change it to 100, super fast. So we're going to add a new transition in here, and you can see there are a handful of options. If you want to do a swipe one, you can swipe left, you can preview it here. I hate those. I think they're terrible. Very few people should use them. Let's add a stinger transition. Stinger transitions are the ones with custom animations. These can be fantastic tools for your stream. They're one of the elements that makes your stream look Like you put a lot of effort into it. I would even say they're one of the few times that you can kind of go overboard and do something over the top and people will still enjoy it. Here's the Fiverr transition. I don't remember what it looked like. Oh, it was this one. That's right. I remember now. So you can see if I hit preview transition, it shows me 2 scenes, but you can see that it transitions from one scene to the next before the animation goes. So what you do is you can set a transition point in milliseconds. Let's set it at half a second. Oh, you can see the transition right before the doors close. 650 milliseconds. There we go. This isn't my favorite transition I've ever seen. It's way too long, but it works. One other thing that's important, I don't know why the audio fade style is set to this. I like using mine as a crossfade so that my audio, my voice is always there while the transition's happening. And now we've got 2 scenes in our transitions. And by the way, if you want a little trade secret about transitions here, you can have a different transition per scene. If I right click on gameplay scene here and go to transition override, I can actually set a different transition specifically for when I transition to the gameplay scene. So for example, if I want a different transition for each scene, I can go and I can make one individually with a plus button over here, name it properly, and then set it as the transition override. Okay, secret over. I can start talking at full volume again. I hope my microphone even picked me up when I said that. And the last basic function that you should be aware of here is the audio mixer, which is pretty straightforward. Most of the time when you add a source, like for example, the one it's picking up here is the cam link. It's actually hearing the microphone on the camera here. When you add a source that also has audio with it, it's going to add it to your audio mixer right here. But for example, display capture, capturing your display doesn't add your gameplay sound into it. And right now we wouldn't hear any audio from the computer at all. So no gameplay audio, no music, no anything. There are 2 ways to add audio sources manually to your stream. One of them is to add an audio capture device. So because our gameplay would be computer audio that's outputted to our headphones, we're going to grab an audio output capture. We'll call it gameplay audio. And I would pretty much grab like my headphones or whatever your audio is actually coming out of, which for me would be my Go XLR system audio. So you can see over here, if I pull up someone's stream now, like let's pull up my boy Wacky Jackie here. Now you can see it's picking up his audio. You can still hear my webcam right here.
Yes.
And also the gameplay.
If you want to pipe this up to 4K, connect to a custom service, you would click custom, and then that service should give you a server address and a stream key, which you enter here, and that's it. I'm not going to talk about how to use Twitch or YouTube or any of that, because when you set up a stream on that service, they give you the instructions as well as the
Audio, no music, no anything. There are 2 ways to add audio sources manually.